What? I'm live. Hold on. Got to set up something on the other side here. Let's click this off. Click this off. Good morning. Good morning. No, it's afternoon. It's evening. It is. What is it? Okay. It is December 3rd. Last month, 2019. December 3rd. Last month, 2019. Kind of crazy. This month flew by super fast. There's a few things to talk about. I have to make this more regular. I apologize for not doing that to myself and to nobody. But quite a busy life I have, so have not been able to really schedule anything regularly, but I'm going to try. Certainly, we'll try to do every day in 2020, and I'll try to do every day for the rest of the year. I'm a little dehydrated today, so I'm going to drink some water during the process. I have done that before. I will continue to do it. We just came off of a weekend of celebration, a week of celebration, really. Lots of people celebrated Thanksgiving, though it's a controversial holiday in this country. Well, I guess it's the only country that actually participates in Thanksgiving that I know of. We'll have to research that a little further. Though a controversial holiday, it is necessary that we all get together and celebrate, at least give thanks and appreciation and propose gratitude for our having living, future living, and the individuals that, oh, interesting. So, I don't know if you can hear me, but if I pull this out halfway, I can hear on both sides, which is kind of strange. Anyway, like I said, it's a good day to at least register some thanks for the life that you're living and the people that you have around you. And I think that is mostly what people do for Thanksgiving. The other thing that they do is they have turkey. And I had turkey. And for the last 3 years, I bought a deep fryer because I will have to admit that turkey is not my favorite thing to eat. And because mostly, not because it's bad. It's not really bad. It doesn't taste bad. It just doesn't taste good. It doesn't taste good because I don't know if it's because it's such a large bird that it has difficulty absorbing flavor when seasoned, especially within the breast portion of the bird. And so with that, many people only eat turkey unless it's sliced turkey that has been processed to the gills in the supermarket that are in slice form. But most people don't actually like turkey. And I would be one of those people that is not a major fan of it and probably only eat it once a year. And since I don't really eat very much processed meat, maybe 2 or 3 times a year, I went to a mall this weekend and ate at a place called Italy. I don't know if you've ever been there, but there's one I'm not sure if there's more than one in LA, but there's one in the Century City Mall. And if you haven't been to that mall, it's ridiculous. Meaning it's very nice, and they've done a good job of renovating. I used to spend a lot of time in that mall 20 years ago. In fact, I was in that mall during September 11th, and we were evacuated because there's some financial towers in Century City, and they thought they would be threatened, and they had no idea if all financial centers were threatened in the United States during that time. So I was actually working in a retail store, and it was early in the morning. I think we were processing something and some product, And anyway, we had to evacuate in the morning. So off topic, but interesting story. I remember that day. I remember what I did for the rest of the day. I remember what I was doing during that time. In fact, there were some people that were from Saudi Arabia that were on staff during that day, and those people disappeared for, actually, I think a couple of them disappeared forever. And I kind of feel like, well, I think one girl in particular disappeared. Well, because she actually told me what happened. So she was gone for like a month, and I don't remember if she went to Saudi Arabia. I think she did, but she said that immediately after September 11th, either the day of, the next day, the FBI visited her home and many of her friends' homes, living in the area, Beverly Hills area, and/or Century City, and questioned them multiple times. So she, at the time, I mean, I don't think she was had any affiliations, but anyway, she was questioned multiple times. So, and she described it as ultimately harassment. And I don't know the details of her background or if she had any affiliations, but she ended up not being happy about that experience, and I think she ended up going back to Saudi Arabia. But anyway, back to the deep fried turkey. So I have been doing this for about, I think this is a third year, and this has been the best year. So the first thing you have to do with your deep fried turkey is you actually have to put it in brine. And brine is a substance that essentially is a seasoning, and the seasoning, you dip the turkey in the seasoning with the expectation that you're going to get some kind of taste from your turkey. And I changed the recipe a little bit this time. I actually added a little more salt, and I added oregano instead of thyme. And that was the life-changing addition to the recipe, because the turkey was amazing this year, better than it had been for the previous 2 years, and actually one of the better fried turkeys that I've ever had. I haven't had a lot. I've had a couple other than my own. And I recommend, if you want to have a turkey taste like, let's say, if you've ever had a pig that was roasted in the ground with a little crunchy outer skin. And I know the vegans, if vegans ever hear this, they'll be upset about it. But anyway, that particular part of the pig tastes amazing when it's roasted. And this is what the outside of the turkey tastes like. The wing sections of the wing portion of the turkey, lots of the skin sections of the turkey actually taste this way, taste really good. So I recommend, if you get an opportunity to deep fry turkey, you should do it. Now it becomes it's actually a lot more wasteful, I realize, than I'd like it to be, because you have to buy 5 gallons of peanut oil, or whatever oil you choose. I couldn't imagine frying it in any other oil, but I use peanut oil. And if I remember the price, I think it was either $35 or $40, something like that. And so, that with the price of the turkey, it can be a little expensive for the average person. But the point is, I mean, there's ultimately, who has a budget for Thanksgiving? So that doesn't necessarily matter, because you're cooking for multiple people. I think we had, I can't remember how many people, maybe 12 people over. But the point is that once you're done cooking the turkey in your 5 gallons of peanut oil, what do you do with it? Now, I search on YouTube quite often for alternative uses for things. This I haven't done, but I'm going to write that on my list to search for alternative uses for your peanut oil. I know one of the alternative uses could be to use it again and deep fry something else. But since I don't really eat anything that's fried, um, I don't know if that's going to be an option. I certainly can maybe do it a couple more times, I suppose, with something, and maybe invite some people over. Maybe I'll do another turkey. But anyway, deep fried turkey is the way to go. And I will, at some point, put together the details of this recipe and put it up on my website when that is launched. And I promise you that you'll like it. But the one thing I will say about deep frying a turkey is this. So it's hard to determine exactly how long it takes to. I had a 20-pound turkey, which I still have probably 10 pounds of, well, maybe not that much, maybe 5 pounds left over. And it's hard to determine how long to cook a turkey for. So I was supposed to cook this turkey for, I think, 80 minutes. So anywhere from 3 to 4 minutes per pound. So I put 4 minutes per pound times 20, that's 80 minutes. And so essentially it's an hour and 20 minutes. And I will have to say that I could have been off 5 or 10 minutes, but ultimately the turkey was done, not for 10 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. The turkey was done around an hour and 5 minutes, maybe an hour and 10 minutes, or maybe an hour. So maybe I was off for 10 minutes or so. But the point is that I 3 minutes times 20 pounds is 60 minutes, and that was more likely the time that the turkey cooked, because if I had cooked it any longer, it would have been dry, and it would have tasted slightly burnt. Now, a deep fried turkey that's burnt doesn't really taste burnt unless you burn it to a crisp and burn the oil, which I think the second time I did, I cooked it too long. So, but this particular time the turkey came out perfect. So you have to be aware. Now I'll tell you a little tip that I noticed all 3 times that I cooked the turkey. The first time I ignored it. Second time I paid attention, but I didn't do anything about it. And third time, something told me to take action. So while I was cooking the turkey, I noticed at around the 60-minute mark, the oil appeared to smoke, but ultimately it was the turkey that appeared to smoke. And once that occurs, I have learned with this last turkey that the turkey is done. If you cook it any longer, it will dry out. You will cook the outer portions of the turkey far more than they need to be cooked. And they taste amazing at this point. But if you cook them beyond this point, they won't taste amazing. So the turkey started to smoke. I thought, that's interesting. I left it in for a couple more minutes, and then I thought, I should take it out. This happened the last time, so I took it out, and I have to tell you, there was at least, I don't know, maybe a half a pound worth of crispy, crunchy, pork-like goodness on the edges of the turkey that I actually gave remnants to when I started to carve the turkey, and people were quite delighted, including myself. So anyway, just keep in mind that for that calculation in cooking the turkey, just remember to err on the side of the lower number of minutes cooked, and pay attention to when the turkey itself starts to smoke. And it's pretty different. It's a pretty different experience. So the turkey kind of cooks normal. There's nothing really rising from the oil other than just little small splashes of oil, and then all of a sudden there's a kind of a light smoke that rises from the pot. So keep that in mind. Now I had no idea that I'd be talking about turkey and how to cook it, so I'll maybe cut that segment up and put it up as tips on how to cook turkey. Just remember when you make your brine recipe, so the brine includes something like I actually don't like thyme that much. It has to be done it has to be mixed with the right other ingredients as well as the right item. So I didn't like it on my turkey the previous 2 times, so I opted to not use it, and I replaced thyme with oregano. I didn't see any. I hadn't seen anybody else that had used oregano as part of their brine recipe, but I recommend using oregano instead of thyme. And I think there was rosemary. No, there was salt. There was quite a bit of salt. If I remember, I think there were 2 cups of salt. There's also the other thing I did was there's vegetable broth. I used about 3/4 of a gallon of vegetable broth, and I used 1/4 of a gallon of chicken broth, which in the previous 2 times I only used vegetable broth. The chicken broth probably added to the flavor of the turkey. As I said, this was the best one that I've done so far. So those 2 things, oregano and chicken broth, and obviously not cooking it too long, made for a perfect turkey this time. And that means the dark meat and the white meat were all done very well and tasted amazing. So, what else did we have? We had stuffing, which is a family recipe. We had mac and cheese, which is my grandmother's recipe, and we had pumpkin pie, not apple pie, pecan pie. What else? That was dessert. We made homemade whipped cream. Trying to think of what else we had. But yeah, did we have? Oh, my son's girlfriend made a kale salad, which was great. I can't think of what else we had, but it all was amazing. And obviously, we ate too much. I ate too much, and I'm feeling it right now. It's my pants are definitely fitting tighter. I think I gained the last time I weighed myself. I gained like 5 or 7 pounds, which is a lot. All right, well that wraps up Thanksgiving. So we'll talk about little current events, and then we'll wrap this up. We don't want to go too long. I just wanted to get something down today. So we still have this impeachment situation going on. So the Democrats actually have what do they call what they've done? They have submitted their information, and so they're trying to figure out what to do at this point. And people are wondering if it's appropriate, if it's the right thing to do. I have already talked about it, so I'm not going to talk about it more. But I think at this point we probably should just do what's best for the country. The country is teetering, has to be teetering on some sort of recession, as it's cyclical, and we are well beyond the peak. Hopefully, because of the internet age and the data age, it won't happen. Some people are projecting that it won't happen, but this definitely won't help. So that's my 2 cents as a business owner. I'm never looking for a recession or a deep recession anyway. The House wants to exclude Russia from the G7. Listen, I'll just give my quick thoughts on this, on the G7. G7 is where the world leaders meet and basically talk about how to proceed forward and personally, and then how to approach and deal with other countries around the world. So, way to look at this is the largest and most imperial powers around the world decide how to make sure that they keep the lesser powers in order. And lesser powers look like people that really can't defend themselves, but we want their resources. So we determine we try to figure out who can tell who what to do, and who can't. But outside of that, they want to exclude Russia from this meeting. One thing I'll say about this is the last thing you want to do is exclude the enemy or the person who can be most retaliatory, and also the person who would retaliate in a most harmful way, in order to gain recognition. That's the last thing you want to do. It reminds me of that situation in The Godfather. As you know, I feel like The Godfather is the number one, the best movie of all time. But anyway, it reminds me of that. I think it was a Godfather, Godfather 2. I don't remember which one. I think it must have been 2 though. But anyway, Godfather, where they have meetings of all the heads of the mob, all the mob heads in this. I think it was a hotel up on the top floor, and then all of a sudden the floor starts to shake, and they assassinate like multiple members of the mafia. So that would probably be how Putin would act if he's not allowed to participate. And so it's probably not a smart thing to exclude Russia. Now, I'm not saying that you want to kiss Russia's ass, but I am saying that you do want to look Putin in the eyes and figure out how he's really feeling and figure out what he really wants and make him feel a part of things. Because as I said before in a previous video, all Russia wants to do is be considered. And that's all. They've been working on this for 25 years to be considered important, or 20 years, maybe longer than 20 years, but from my experience, it's been about 20 years. And now they are in the forefront of conversation, and you want to keep them in the forefront of, or at least in the conversation, or at least let them think that they're important and part of the conversation. Otherwise, they're just going to continue to do silly things like invade territories and impose their strength on weaker countries, essentially just for attention. Anyway, so that's my thoughts on the G7. Kamala Harris has dropped out of the presidential race, and of course, Trump said he'll miss her via Twitter. This is an interesting situation. It's a person who basically cracked under pressure. I saw a bunch of interviews with her before, and I'm not sure why. I mean, maybe she put herself up to it. Maybe somebody put her up to it. But there are a few interviews that could have been seen as stress tests for her. Stress tests for her, and they didn't go well. And so, I mean, if you want to do something, I suppose you should never quit, and you have a team behind you. But she didn't have the charisma. She didn't have the ability to kind of relay her points of views in a way that was compelling. And what I mean by compelling is, I mean, not only do they have to be substantive, but they also have to be compelling in a connective and emotional way, and also in a way that makes people feel like you care. So you don't really hear in her vocal tone, in her body language, in her conversation with people, you don't hear empathy. And what I mean by empathy is, like, empathy doesn't always mean, let's say, compassion. And I mean, we could look up the word empathy, but what I mean by, I don't necessarily mean that she lacked compassion, although she probably in that role, in those jobs, especially having been a prosecutor, she probably doesn't have very much compassion if you spend any time with prosecutors. But ultimately, and that's probably what read through with her when she tried to run for president. But what I mean by empathy is there's no group of people that she could really connect with, because you could not read through her delivery um, a, a, any connective tissue to a particular group or type. And the one thing that Trump has is he is reading to a specific group. He's a specific group is um, reading his empathy, his interest, and he could just be using keywords and be a better actor. In some ways, I think that's true. In other ways, I think that there's a more covert message that is being delivered by certain politicians that other people read into and pick up on and um, can associate with or have interest in, or feel like that that person is somebody that they're interested in backing. And she told the line, or she never committed to a specific message. She was afraid to. I'm not sure exactly what the reason was, but she wasn't capable of creating that connection with a core group of people. And so, therefore, there was this idea that she was, um, a woman of color. Uh, Obviously, she has to have some intellect because she's in the position that she's in. She she purported to be tough on crime, which was created really created problems for her, because people are more informed now about what that means, and they have specifics on what that means, and some people don't like it. Um, so anyway, I think that that's the main reason why she had difficulty, other than the fact that she had difficulty really thinking on her feet. And I don't mean that she's not smart. I just think that she was too protective about maybe what she really felt. And actually, maybe it means that she's a lot more honest person than people realize, and she had difficulty being a person who could lie on the spot. And a lot of politicians have the ability to do that, and maybe she wasn't comfortable doing it. So somebody like, well, anyway, I think Tulsi Gabbard is a I there are things about her that I like. I think that she will. She's gonna if she she's the candidate. She's gonna have a hard time with Trump, because she's another person that she may actually get a little bit frazzled when he starts yelling out insults. But I don't know. She's in the military, and it's kind of par for the course in the military. Everybody kind of talks crap and gets on people's cases. So maybe she's used to that. I'm not sure. But and the other guy, I mean, listen, none of these people are really contenders. Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden are more probable contenders just because they're propped up. People seem to be following Elizabeth Warren a little, uh, and also Bernie Sanders. Like those are the probable contenders that'll end up um, neck and neck at the end, and who knows which one will break through. But it's an interesting situation we have, considering the presidential contenders. But yeah, Kamala Harris is out. We should talk about at some point, or I should talk about Andrew Yang. I won't talk about him. I'll just say that he is worth the conversation. But for a more in-depth conversation, because we need to really talk about what he's proposing, and whether or not it's something that people should be interested in. On other news, Conor McGregor has decided to return to the octagon, having made the upwards of $100 million in I think 2017, and having not done much work. I think his last fight was obviously against Khabib, and I don't remember exactly what year that was, but he got annihilated by Khabib. But I'm sure that some of the hurt and sting from that was reduced by his ultra successful whiskey company. So apparently, this whiskey company has the potential to make him a billionaire. So, but anyway, there's still honor in Ireland. There's still honor and interest in fighting, and Mr. McGregor has decided to return to the octagon. Supposedly, it's going to happen in January, and then there are some later dates. Who knows? Some people say he's going to come back to fight. So he's supposed to fight Cowboy Cerrone, which is going to be it's going to be a tough fight. Although the last fight that Cerrone fought was, you could see that there is a decline in Cowboy Cerrone, and that's probably why his team decided to pick him as a fighter, and because he's been beaten up, even in the fight that he won. I think he's lost the last two fights, and even the last three fights. I think the third fight, I can't remember who he fought, but he ended up winning that fight, and he thought Cowboy thought that I think he thought he had sort of reached a pinnacle, but ended up losing in the next fight pretty badly. Had his head split open by I don't remember who that was, but that's who's going to fight. It's going to be a tough fight. It's going to be at 170. And here are my thoughts on Conor McGregor. I always felt I had not seen Conor McGregor fight prior to, I don't remember exactly. I think prior to Nate Diaz, or is it Nate Diaz? And so after he fought Nate Diaz in the two fights, I watched those two fights. I went back and looked at his previous fights, and I realized that he may have been slightly overrated because he was fighting much smaller guys. And I mean, he has a right to do that. And sometimes the bigger guys get beat by the smaller guys. But these were considerably smaller guys. And ultimately, this is the reason why McGregor is now fighting at 170. And so, you make weight and you balloon up another 30 pounds, and so you're walking around 170, 180. Let's say some people lose 30 pounds or more. So let's say you make weight, and then like I said, you bump up to 170, and then the other guy really walks around at 150, 155 after he's rehydrated. Then it becomes an unfair advantage in weight, and I feel like that's what happens. That is what happened in those previous fights. Now, there are some. I'm what they call a casual fan. I don't have any specific detailed knowledge of the UFC fighters or really any fight game. I watch I'm a spectator, but that's my 2 cents. And so this is going to be a tough fight for him because he's actually going to be fighting a guy who is similar to him in terms of stature and size, who actually may be bigger. I'll come back to that at a later post. I will start posting more about that later. But I think that this is going to be a tough fight for him. So maybe he feels comfortable. Maybe he feels better at this weight. Maybe he's been practicing and feels stronger and feels like his striking is going to be more sufficient at that weight. Who knows? And then there's a belief that he's going after Masvidal as a mega fight. So we'll see what happens. But McGregor is back. I'll be watching every fight in his return. I actually there's something about him that I do like. I don't mind the trash talking. I think it's actually, people are trying to make martial arts and the fight game. People like Khabib in his corner, and they're trying to make the fight game this respectable sort of honor thing where you respect each other, and then you go in and you uh, give your lay your blood and guts on the canvas, and then you at the end you shake hands. But listen, this is a game where people can die, people's heads are split open, blood on the canvas, and ultimately it is. Uh, if you've ever been in a fight, a physical fight, you know that your most primal instincts appear during that time. Now, if you're a professional fighter, I suppose that you're trained so much that it's a lot more methodical and a lot less primal. However, I'm sure that those instincts still kick in. But anyway, like I said, I don't have a problem with the trash talking, and I think Conor does a good job. But the real reason why I actually like Conor, and not necessarily as a fighter, but just as ultimately a businessman and a person who has kind of taken the sport and used it to his advantage. That's one of the reasons why I like him. But the second reason why is he recognized in Floyd Mayweather and his family what they did, what they had accomplished, and he actually voiced respect for them and recognized them for their business acumen and their ability to turn essentially their fighting skill into ultimately an empire. And typically, people don't give other people credit for the insights that they provided. But there was a particular moment where he did that, and at least from that particular moment, I picked up that he had a certain amount of respect for those guys, and I appreciated that, especially since they were his adversaries. So we shall see. Who is going to be the MVP for the NFL? Lamar Jackson. Ron Rivera, fired. Okay, so listen, Ron Rivera should have been fired a long time ago because Cam Newton is a freaking athletic specimen. And the fact that that Cam Newton has taken more punishment and hits than any other quarterback in the league, and I think I don't remember what the stats were, but it's an incredibly different amount than others. That alone he should have been fired. And now Cam essentially is most likely, most likely he is now out of his prime, which is sad. And not only is out of his prime, but he's also some part of his foot is injured. He has to have surgery. And I'll just say this: listen, if you've ever broken any part of your body or damaged or injured any part of your body, and this may be different now because of stem cells and medical advances, but if you've ever injured any particular part of your body, I can tell you from personal experience that part of your body is never as good as it was before. And something as intricate and as intricate is probably the best word in terms of or complicated as your foot is in terms of its makeup, the number of bones, ligaments, and muscles. It's a very difficult place to have an injury. And though they probably have the best doctors in the world, it's unlikely that his foot will be as good as it was before. Now, there have been people that have come back in the NFL from ACL surgeries, which, they've been doing ACL surgeries for years now, and it seems like they've perfected it because there are people that have come back. They've been just as good or better. But I hope he comes back better than he was, or as good as he was, or at least he can perform and actually peak. And I hope he hasn't peaked, Cam, that is. But he should have been fired a long time ago because Cam was somebody who maybe not as athletic or as agile, nimble as Lamar Jackson, but definitely somebody who had versatility, and that versatility was destroyed by lack of protection. And I blame that on the coach because ultimately the coach should have been firing linemen left and right until he got linemen that cared about protecting the quarterback. And if so, people blamed it on Cam's leadership. If he didn't possess the leadership, then the coach should have stepped in and supplanted Cam as the leader in terms of leadership, because it's about winning and it's not about it's about winning. So he should have stepped in a long time ago and protected Cam from the kind of abuse that he took. So good. Hopefully they find a new coach, and I'm sure that Cam is now going to move to another city. Somebody said that he would be good in LA. He is a kind of superstar, good-looking guy who has star power, and I'm not sure if he has. I mean, he does have like just immediate charisma. He does seem to lack. There's some things that he's lacking. I won't say there are because I'm not here to criticize anybody. I'm not going to criticize Ron Rivera because I think that it was pretty obvious that he was. That's supposedly the most important position on the team, and it wasn't protected. And if you look at how well Tom Brady is protected, at least that's an example of what's necessary, and that didn't happen. And so should have been fired a long time ago. And that's probably and possibly why Cam has the attitude that he has, and maybe couldn't voice it, but who knows? So we'll see. Maybe Cam will move to. Somebody was saying that he needed to be in an LA team because he's kind of like a superstar that way. Maybe not a bad idea. Did anybody see that Peloton ad? Well, the Peloton ad was essentially. This is the second time they get on Peloton's case about their ads. The first time was that all the Pelotons were in homes that were like $5 million with the best views in the world, and it's just sitting there, in this high-rise apartment overlooking, beautiful skyline and in homes that most people can't afford, and so on. So this time it's something very similar, but ultimately it just seemed like a nonsense ad with a girl who was a wife of a guy, and just presented this idyllic lifestyle and milestones within the use of the bike that were kind of cliche and very funny. So if you haven't taken a look at that, it's pretty funny. But I heard that the stock was up 5% yesterday or day before yesterday. Actually, no, yesterday. And people are talking about it. The more they talk about it, the more interest people are going to have. Some people don't even know what Peloton bike is, and now I'm sure they will, because it's kind of a mainstream conversation. It was all over Twitter and all over the news stations. There's a new fight coming up, not this weekend. I think it's the next weekend. It's Joshua and Ruiz. I won't make a prediction. I'll make a prediction closer to the fight. I have to do some research on what's actually happened, what's transpired since the last fight. I haven't done much research. I haven't listened to what people had to say. Now, I don't listen to any predictions unless they just happen to come up. I made a prediction in the last fight, and I was off by 1 round. So I think that that's a 1-for-1 track record. So we'll see what happens. But I will make a prediction later on. I need to take a look. I want to listen to how Joshua talks in his interviews. I want to listen to how Ruiz talks. I want to listen to how people around them talk. I want to look at their body language. I want to look at their eyes. I want to see what kind I want to see the truth in their presentations. And once I do that, then I will determine also I'll watch the original fight again, and then from there I will determine and predict what I think or how I think the fight will go. I will say this: I have watched a few snippets, and I will say this: Joshua looks. Some people say he looks leaner. I don't know if that's true. Maybe a little bit. Doesn't look as large. And Ruiz looks leaner as well. They said the same thing about Ortiz, and we saw what happened to Ortiz. So what Ruiz should have done was actually stayed the same, but maybe he did. Who knows? So I think Ruiz looks thinner, but he still looks great, though. From those from hitting the pads and those practice segments. Those combinations look quick, man. They look quick. They look hard. They look fast. So he's looking lighter on his feet. Looks like he's ready to keep that heavyweight title. And Joshua, though the way they're portraying it doesn't I shouldn't say he doesn't look like he looks good. But the way they're presenting it is that he's become very focused and interested in regaining his title. So I'm going to spend more time paying attention to. They have sort of like a 24/7 of series. I'm going to pay attention to that, and then I'll let you guys know what I think about leading up to the fight, and then an actual prediction. All right. Well, that's it. We put in some time. We talked about various subjects. It's good to get this off my chest, off my mind. I feel clear. This is almost like a meditative session. It's almost like talking to a shrink, although I've never done that, but I would imagine it's something similar to this. 2020 is coming. December 3rd. Wow, the year's almost over. All right. Talk soon. Adios.